Hello everyone, I'm Wave. Today I wanted to kind of have a different style video because as of right now, in Japan as well as in China, there's a lot of different celebratory stuff being held in regards to Maitetsu's 10th anniversary. So today I kind of want to just touch upon a few things and I guess just reminisce and talk about Maitetsu as well as the company Live as a whole. So let's get into it. So when it comes to Maitetsu, I wouldn't say it is one of my personal top favorite visual novels of all time, but at the same time I kind of am questioning as to whether maybe it is a top 5 or at least for me it's probably a top 10 visual novel out of all the VNs that I've read so far. For those of you that know me and have been watching the channel for a good bit now, you would know that Monobeno, which is a different title made by the same company that made Maitetsu, is my current favorite visual novel of all time, at least as of current. I would have only read that visual novel because of the fact that I read the English translation for Maitetsu. One thing about Maitetsu though is that despite how popular it apparently is overseas, that it still hasn't gotten a full translation, and what I mean by that is that there is a second iteration, Maitetsu Last Run. When it comes to the localization of Maitetsu, it is incomplete. There is only I guess what you could say is the first half. I almost want to say it's maybe only the first third because Maitetsu Last Run as a game is quite expansive. It adds a multitude of other new character routes as well as after stories for the 3 main heroines, and I had kind of hoped that with the 10th anniversary, Hikari Field was kind of doing a lot of promotional stuff, and I was hoping that maybe Hikari Field was going to announce that they were going to do an English translation of Last Run to coincide with the celebrations for the 10th anniversary, and we have not heard anything as far as that. So I think unfortunately Maitetsu Last Run, and then what I would also say Monobeno, or Monobeno Happy End being the definitive edition of that title, are still visual novels that are going to be sitting on the list for stuff that people would want translated, but unfortunately maybe might not ever get translated. One thing I kind of want to bring up is I have the list pulled up right here. I think a little while back there was a survey that went through. I didn't end up actually voting on it, but I ended up looking at the results and was quite interested with what ended up being pulled up. So it was through Kagami Games, which is a localization studio that I feel only kind of sprouted out pretty recently and has been really banging through titles. Looking at the list for what people ended up wanting translated, they gave us a top 50 of visual novels that people wanted localized. And if we look as far as loose games, I was quite surprised that Monobeno was number 14 out of 50. It shows up again for Monobeno Happy End towards the end of the list at 48, and then we can see Maitetsu Last Run is at number 32. But yeah, I would say Maitetsu being maybe one of the titles that is more popular. I'm surprised that there is a decent amount of titles here that I wouldn't know, and I think it kind of just comes down to the fact that it's hard to know each and every single title of these untranslated VNs that are apparently worth their time because there's hardly anyone talking about them. But Maitetsu Last Run being one of those more prevalent titles, sitting around in the 30s, I think, shows that Maitetsu Last Run, at least for me personally, is maybe something that is not the greatest visual novel of all time, but at the same time, I think Maitetsu has really stuck with me in that I found it to be one of the coziest and just best slice of life visual novels that I've read so far. And while I will say that it has some sorts of hiccups or issues with it, I can look past those issues and just really appreciate the story of Maitetsu for what it is. But I do think, unfortunately, Maitetsu Last Run, we might still be many years off from a translation of it. If not, maybe it might not ever happen. Getting back into 10th anniversary stuff, I know towards the end of January is when they released something that I had talked about on the channel already before, being some Weiss Schwarz trading cards that had all of the different Lose IPs, being Monobeno, Maitetsu, and then Gothic Delusion. And alongside that, we got some unique drawings for artwork as far as the secret art cards for both Monobeno and Maitetsu. I can actually show those in person here because I ended up ordering a couple different boxes of it and got mine a little bit into February. There was a key 25th anniversary box that came out, and I purposely didn't buy that. I went out of my way to buy the one that was going to have Maitetsu and Monobeno in it. I really enjoyed both titles, and I think kind of coming back to that, I really appreciated the story of Maitetsu. And even though Maitetsu is, like I said, maybe not on one of the greatest visual novels that I've read. I found it to be something that's like really special to me. Getting onto the legacy of Luz, with that third title, I have not read Gothic Delusion, unfortunately. It's something that I do need to get around to at some point. I think what's also interesting is the fact that despite Monobeno and Maitetsu being like apparently quite popular over in both Japan and in China, that Gothic Delusion is kind of treated the same way in maybe how I am, right? Where Gothic Delusion is apparently, it was the first game that Luz ended up making, but it seems like a lot of people haven't really played Gothic Delusion. In a way, from what I can see, Gothic Delusion kind of looks like it's a little bit of a different styled experience, to where I think Monobeno and Maitetsu kind of do this like really good job of interweaving characters as well as like setting, to where that's where I would say both of them kind of have that like cozier vibe, where you're able to be like, okay, well, what is the town of Maitetsu or the village within Monobeno, and is able to maybe like feel a little bit more immersive because of you have like all the different residents, and it really does just make you have that more of like a slice of life vibe. I think Gothic Delusion is a more actiony style visual novel, at least from like what I can kind of tell, and as their first visual novel is probably far less polished when it comes to like when they got around to doing Monobeno, but it's kind of something I wanted to like briefly touch upon, because I think in a way the legacy of Luz, people love Luz titles, but I think in a way Gothic Delusion hasn't really gotten a whole lot of that love, considering that we could see, okay, yeah, Maitetsu, they're doing a whole bunch of different things, and we could talk about like the legacy of Maitetsu as well, to where when Luz was shutting down, I could probably pull it up timeline wise, because they actually did announce it on the Steam page as well, so I can actually pull that up quite easily. When they were closing down Luz, they ended up doing a series of concerts around Japan titled Luz Last Concert, and tied in with the name of Maitetsu Last Run, where they did a bunch of concerts throughout Japan and featured songs from Monobeno, Maitetsu, and I think also Gothic Delusion. At that time, I had finished Monobeno and was currently reading Maitetsu Last Run, so I wasn't too like interested in checking it out at the time, but one thing I wanted to kind of bring up was that it was kind of hidden within the Steam files, but what was interesting was that as they were doing these concerts, whoever on that side of Luz actually ended up hiding links for 2 of the performances of Luz's last concert and hid it within the Steam files, so that way you could go and just click and you could end up watching it in full. And those links were taken down, and they were eventually put up as videos that you can purchase off of, like I noticed, on DL site. But I had checked those out when I ended up finding them at the first time, and I kind of regret not recording them, because it was like really cool. I remember watching a couple of different like performances, was trying to find some of the songs at least that I like knew at that point. So I was like looking around, I was able to see they did like a performance, I'm pretty sure, of like a bunch of the different cast members from Monobeno all singing like the OP for the game. And now, a couple days back from when I'm recording this video, they ended up live streaming as well as holding a concert for the 10th anniversary of Maitetsu, where it was only Maitetsu songs, but it was pretty interesting that where Luz's Last Run was an event where you had to purchase tickets, but they ended up posting it online very briefly for people to watch that had bought Maitetsu Last Run. It was that they just live streamed the event, and I was lucky enough to kind of catch that event and watch a little bit of that as well, scrub through the video and see like what was going on, what people were saying in the comments and stuff like that. And it's pretty interesting that Luz as a company could be closed down, but the fact that like they were still celebrating Maitetsu as a project and kind of like honoring the legacy and how much people really like love and appreciate the story of Maitetsu. Along with that, I know there's like some other stuff. I saw like briefly, I think on Twitter, there's like some sort of like app that you could download right now for the 10th anniversary of Maitetsu, where you can like take pictures with like AR and it'll have like characters from the game show up in the pictures or something like that. As far as like Maitetsu, I think a lot of people really love it, and I love it too. So I kind of wanted to just like touch upon and talk about some like yapping as far as Luz as a whole and Maitetsu Monobeno, and hopefully at some point I'll read Gothic Delusion. As I mentioned with Luz's last concert and how they ended up taking it down, as I was lucky to tune into that little bit of a live stream for the Maitetsu 10th anniversary concert, I decided I was going to go ahead and screen record one of the performances, and I ended up recording the OP for last run. I want to say it should be good as far as like YouTube and not getting taken down, because I think Wisp, which is the company that owns all of the like the Lose titles, they've been pretty chill. And you can look right now, there is a couple of recordings of Lose last concert here on YouTube. So I ended up recording the OP for Maitetsu last run, as far as like, I guess you could say Hachiroku's route, the last run. And I think the OP that kind of like really demonstrates when Lose was making Maitetsu last run, the reason why they called it last run was because they knew that they were going to be shutting down the company after making it, and they wanted to make the best visual novel that they could. I figured I would record that specific OP, and I guess I will go ahead and just leave you guys off on that recording. It's like 5 minutes long. But before I leave you guys off on that OP for Maitetsu last run, I once again just want to thank you guys for watching. This has been me just yapping about my love for Maitetsu and Monobeno. Thank you guys for watching. I've been Wave, and I will see you next time.
これから過ぎ去ったよりも素晴らしい景色広がる飛んでる抜けたら窓を開けて風感じてみよう今日本当にありがとうございます。マイテツ10周年おめでとうございます。この先のレールも皆さんがつなげていってくださいね。夕立の中消える汽笛緑に舞い降り 君と見た夢の先越えて愛を語り継げるようにとつなぐラストランこのレールが永遠に続いていきますように。